I always thought moving into a new apartment would be exciting, a fresh start, the kind of thing people talk about when they want to change in their lives. But the moment I stepped into this place, I felt a subtle wrongness that I couldn't shake. The building was old, the kind with creaky floors and long hallways that smelled faintly of mildew and waxed wood. My apartment itself was small, a one-bedroom on the third floor, with tall windows that looked out onto the street. Everything seemed fine, almost too normal, except for the way the shadows seemed to gather in the corners, even during the day. I moved in during the late afternoon, carrying boxes up the narrow staircase and trying not to notice how the walls groaned under my weight. The elevator was broken, they told me, which was fine. I liked the exercise. I unpacked slowly, trying to distract myself with small tasks, but every so often I'd hear a soft scrape from the hallway outside my door. At first, I assumed it was the building settling or another tenant moving in. But it happened often, too often for coincidence. The first night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside my door. Slow, deliberate, pacing back and forth. I froze, listening. They weren't heavy footsteps, more like someone tiptoeing, careful, waiting. I told myself it was my imagination, that living alone makes you hear things you wouldn't normally notice. But when I turned on my bedside lamp and pressed my ear to the door, I could hear breathing. Slow, steady, and oddly rhythmic, almost as if the person was counting. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, and by morning, the sound had stopped. A week passed, and the incidents became harder to ignore. I started noticing things in the apartment itself. A box that had been in the middle of the floor would be moved slightly overnight. My keys would vanish from the counter, only to reappear on the windowsill. I even thought I saw a shadow flicker at the edge of my vision as I walked to the bathroom, but when I turned, nothing was there. I tried to rationalize it all. Maybe the old building shifted things. Maybe I was just tired. But the unease kept building, like a quiet pressure in my chest. One night, I woke up to a soft tapping on the window. I live on the third floor. There's no tree close enough for branches to reach it, no fire escape. I froze, staring at the dark glass. The tapping came again, slow and deliberate, almost musical. My heart hammered in my chest. I pulled the curtain aside, and there was nothing, just the empty street below, lit by the dim glow of a street lamp. I told myself it was a branch, maybe an animal, anything that would explain the sound, but it didn't feel right. The air in the room was too still, too heavy, like it had been waiting. A few days later, I found a note slipped under my door. Small, roughly torn, with jagged handwriting that looked as though it had been scratched out in a hurry. It said only, "You shouldn't be here." I laughed at first, the nervous kind of laugh that comes when fear is mingled with disbelief. Maybe it was a prank, maybe another tenant with too much time on their hands. But that night, the footsteps came back, louder this time, circling my door for hours. The breathing followed, slow and calculated. I didn't sleep again. The next morning, I noticed something I couldn't explain. On my bathroom mirror, faintly etched in the condensation from my shower, were letters forming a single word, leave. I scrubbed the mirror clean, thinking perhaps it was a trick of the steam, but the feeling of being watched didn't go away. Everywhere I looked, I felt eyes on me. When I cooked dinner, I imagined someone standing just behind me, a shadow lingering closer than it should be. The building, the apartment, it felt alive in a way that wasn't comforting. I tried to confide in the building manager, but he was an old man with deep-set eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. When I mentioned the notes and the footsteps, he frowned, muttering something about the history of the place and some tenants just don't last here. I pressed for details, but he shook his head and walked away, leaving me with a gnawing feeling that I wasn't supposed to ask questions. Then it escalated. One night, I woke to the sound of scratching coming from inside the walls themselves. Slow, deliberate, like claws dragging against plaster. I checked every inch of the apartment, every door, every corner, but found nothing. I thought I saw movement in the shadows, a figure standing just outside the reach of my lamplight. It didn't move, didn't blink, just waited. I held my breath, frozen, as the scratching continued for what felt like hours. By morning, I was shaking, convinced I was losing my mind. I started sleeping with the lights on, my keys clutched in my hand like a weapon, but even then I could feel it. Something in the apartment had noticed me. It was aware. I could hear faint whispers sometimes, soft, incoherent, just on the edge of hearing. I told myself it was stress, anxiety, exhaustion, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. One evening, as I returned from work, I noticed the front door of my apartment slightly ajar. I never leave it unlocked. My stomach dropped as I crept inside, the hair on my arms standing up. Everything looked normal, at first glance. Nothing was out of place except for a single item on the floor, a small, cracked porcelain doll, its face painted with a smile that seemed far too wide. I didn't own it, I had never seen it before, and yet it was there, staring up at me as if it had been waiting for me to return. I picked it up, trembling, and then I noticed the note tucked under its arm. The same jagged handwriting, "You're next." My hands went cold. My heart raced. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and sat against it, unable to move. That night, the footsteps were louder than ever, circling the apartment, stomping up the hallway, then retreating just out of reach. The breathing followed, closer now, right behind me, but whenever I turned, there was nothing. Only shadows and silence, waiting. I stayed in the apartment for a few more days, unsure of what to do. I considered calling the police, but what would I say? That my apartment was haunted. That someone, or something, was inside my walls, leaving dolls and notes and whispering in the night? No one would believe me. I started sleeping in my car, keeping the lights on and the doors locked, just so I could get a few hours of uneasy rest. Then, yesterday, I found a new note. This one wasn't under the door or slipped under the mat. It was on my kitchen table, written in the same jagged hand. It said, simply, "We've been waiting." I don't know who "we" is. I don't want to know. I left the apartment immediately and haven't gone back. I stayed with a friend, packing only the essentials, but every time I close my eyes, I see the shadow in the corner, the figure standing in the doorway, waiting. I can't stay there. I can't live there. The building feels alive in a way that's not human. Something is inside those walls, patient, calculating, and it doesn't want me here. I keep thinking about the old man, the building manager, and the way he refused to explain anything. Maybe he knew. Maybe he's been here all along, or maybe he's just another tenant who didn't last. I never thought a late night walk could change the way I see the world, but what happened that night still lingers in my mind, the kind of memory that sticks like a shadow at the edge of your vision. I think I need to get it off my chest, so I'm writing it here, hoping that sharing it might somehow make it feel less real. It was just past midnight when I decided to take a walk. I had been cooped up in my apartment all evening, trying to distract myself from the kind of thoughts that spiral too quickly if left alone. My city is quiet at night, almost eerily so, except for the occasional hum of a distant car or the scrape of wind against the pavement. I wrapped myself in a thick jacket, pulled my scarf tight around my neck, and stepped outside. The street was almost empty, save for the flickering street lamps that lined the sidewalk like tired sentinels. I had walked this route hundreds of times, yet that night, everything felt off. The air was colder than usual, but it wasn't the cold that made me uneasy, it was the feeling that I wasn't entirely alone. I brushed it off as paranoia and started walking faster, my footsteps echoing in the empty street. About 10 minutes into my walk, I noticed something strange. In the distance, just beyond the pool of light from a street lamp, a figure stood perfectly still. At first, I thought it was just a shadow, but as I got closer, I could make out the shape of a person, or something that looked like a person. They were wearing a long coat, their hands shoved deep into their pockets, and they were staring straight at me. I slowed down. My heart was beating faster, a drum in my chest. Something about the figure didn't feel right. There was no hat, no hair visible, just the faint outline of a head and shoulders. I told myself it was someone waiting for a friend or maybe just standing there for some reason I couldn't see. I tried to focus on the rhythm of my footsteps, to tell myself I was imagining things. Then, the figure moved. Not a full step, just a tilt, a shift that made my stomach knot. I realized then that they had been moving in some way all along, subtle, almost imperceptible, like a shadow stretching toward me. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. I tried to pass by without looking directly at them, my eyes fixed on the cracked pavement, but when I glanced up, the figure was closer. I picked up my pace, my scarf tightening uncomfortably around my neck. The street seemed to stretch longer than it should have, the shadows deeper, darker. I could feel the weight of someone, or something, behind me, moving in time with my steps. My brain screamed at me to run, but my legs felt heavy, as if the pavement itself was holding me down. Then I heard it, a sound so faint, I thought I was imagining it. Footsteps. Not mine, not echoing like mine, but soft, deliberate, keeping pace exactly with me. I spun around, but the street behind me was empty. No one there. Only the distant hum of the city and the flickering street lamps. I kept walking, faster now, but the footsteps continued, shadowing mine perfectly. Panic started to rise in my chest, a thick, suffocating weight. I wanted to call someone, but my phone was in my bag, tucked away, and I couldn't reach it fast enough. I told myself I was imagining things. It had to be some coincidence, some weird trick of sound and shadow. But deep down, I knew I wasn't alone. I turned onto a narrower street, thinking maybe I could lose them in the maze of alleys and side streets I knew so well. That's when I saw it, an apartment window, on the second floor of a building I passed every day that had always been dark. And now, a faint light glowed from within. But the light wasn't steady, it pulsed like a heartbeat, and every time it did, I thought I could see a figure moving behind the curtain, watching me. I froze. The figure in the window moved closer, pressing something against the glass. A hand. A face. I couldn't tell. My brain was screaming at me to run, but my legs refused. Then I felt it, a presence, not behind me this time, but right next to me. My body went cold, my breath caught in my throat. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. And then, a voice. Soft, almost too soft to hear, whispering directly into my ear. You shouldn't be here. I bolted. Every muscle in my body screamed as I ran, twisting through the streets I knew like the back of my hand, praying the sound of my own footsteps would drown out whatever was following me. I didn't stop until I reached my apartment building, heart hammering, lungs burning, my jacket soaked in sweat. I slammed the door shut behind me and leaned against it, gasping, trying to convince myself it had been my imagination. It wasn't. Because the next morning, when I went to check the window I had passed, the light was gone. The apartment was empty, as if it had never been occupied. I asked my neighbors about it, but they insisted no one had lived there for months. No one had. I've tried to rationalize it, really. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe I was hallucinating after staying up too late. But I've walked those streets countless times since, late at night, and I never see that figure again. I've never heard the footsteps again. But sometimes, just as I'm falling asleep, I swear I can hear a faint whisper, soft and deliberate, telling me, again, that I shouldn't be here. It's a strange thing, the kind of fear that doesn't attack your senses all at once but lingers, lingering at the edge of perception, like a shadow in the corner of a room. I still walk at night, sometimes. I don't know why. Maybe to prove to myself I'm not crazy. Or maybe I like the feeling of something watching, waiting, just out of reach, reminding me how small and fragile we really are. I don't know if anyone will read this, or if anyone even cares, but I had to tell someone. It's been months, and I still think about it almost every night. I've learned to notice shadows a little more carefully, to listen to the rhythm of footsteps that aren't mine, and to respect the quiet spaces where the world seems to hold its breath. Some things are better left unseen, some things are better left alone. But some nights, when the city is quiet and the street lamps flicker just right, I can't help but wonder if I'll see that figure again. And if I do, will I be ready? I never believed in rules for places until I moved into that apartment. It was cheap in a way that should have warned me. A one-bedroom on the edge of town, close enough to hear traffic but far enough that the streets emptied at night. The landlord didn't ask many questions. He slid the lease across the table, avoided eye contact, and said something that stuck with me even then. Most people don't stay long. I assumed he meant students or short-term renters. I didn't press him. I needed somewhere to live, and the place looked fine during the day. Clean, quiet, normal. The first week passed without incident. The second week, I found the list. It was taped to the inside of the hall closet door, hidden behind my coats. A single sheet of lined paper, yellowed at the edges, written in neat, careful handwriting. I assumed it was left behind by the previous tenant. It was titled simply, Things to Remember at Night. The list had rules. Not suggestions. Rules. Always lock the bedroom door before midnight. If you hear your name, Do not answer. Do not look into the hallway mirror between 2:11 and 2:33 a.m. If the closet door is open, close it immediately and leave the room. If you wake up and cannot move, keep your eyes closed. If something knocks from inside the apartment, pretend you don't hear it. If you break a rule, do not panic. Panic makes it worse. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud and shook my head. It was obviously a prank. Some edgy former tenant trying to creep out the next person. I ripped the paper down, folded it, and tossed it into the kitchen trash. That night, I forgot about it. At 12:07 a.m., I realized I hadn't locked my bedroom door. I was already in bed, lights off, phone charging on the nightstand. I lay there for a moment, debating whether it was worth getting up. The hallway outside my bedroom was dark, the kind of dark that feels thicker than it should. I told myself I was being stupid. I got up and locked the door. At 2:14 a.m., I woke up suddenly, heart racing for no reason I could identify. The apartment was silent. No traffic. No neighbors. Just the hum of the refrigerator somewhere far away. I rolled over and froze. Across the room, reflected faintly in the darkness, was the hallway mirror. I had left my bedroom door open when I went to bed. I stared at the mirror, my mind trying to catch up. I couldn't see much, just a sliver of the hallway, the bathroom door, the edge of the living room. Everything looked normal. Then something moved. Not in my room. In the reflection. A shape passed slowly through the hallway, too tall, too thin, its head tilted at an angle that made my stomach turn. It didn't walk. It glided, like it wasn't quite touching the floor. I squeezed my eyes shut. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Seconds. Minutes. Eventually, I forced myself to move. I rolled out of bed, slammed the door shut, locked it, and slid down against it, shaking. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, the list was back. Taped neatly to my bedroom door. The trash can in the kitchen was empty. I read the rules again, slower this time. My hands were sweating. I noticed something I hadn't before. The handwriting wasn't shaky. It wasn't rushed. It looked practiced. Like someone who had written this list many times. I tried to leave that day. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and stepped into the hallway. As soon as I did, the air felt wrong. Heavy. Pressurized. My ears popped like I was changing altitude. The hallway mirror was covered now. A blanket had been draped over it, pinned carefully at the corners. I hadn't done that. I reached for the front door and stopped. There were scratch marks on the inside of it. Long, shallow grooves, starting near the handle and trailing downward, like something had dragged its fingers while standing very close. I stood there for a long time before unlocking the door. Nothing happened. I left, went to work, tried to act normal. I told myself I'd come back, grab the rest of my things, and break the lease. But when I returned that evening, exhausted and jumpy, the apartment looked wrong. The furniture had shifted. Not much. Just enough that I noticed. The couch angled slightly differently. A chair pulled out from the table. The closet door in the hallway was open. I remembered rule number 4. I crossed the apartment in 3 long strides, slammed the closet door shut, and turned away immediately. Something exhaled behind me. Not a breath from lungs. A slow release of air, like pressure escaping. I didn't look. I walked straight into my bedroom, locked the door, and sat on the bed until my legs stopped shaking. That night, I followed the rules. I locked the door before midnight. I didn't look at the mirror. When I heard faint tapping from the living room wall, 3 soft knocks, spaced evenly, I stared at the floor and pretended I didn't hear it. The knocking continued for hours. At exactly 2:11 a.m., the tapping stopped. At 2:33 a.m., I heard something laugh. It sounded almost like me. The next morning, there was a new rule added to the list. Do not trust the voice. It learns quickly. I stopped inviting people over. I stopped sleeping normally. Every night became a careful performance. Lock. Check. Avoid. Pretend. Some nights were quiet. Others were not. Sometimes I would wake up unable to move, my body heavy and useless, pressure pressing down on my chest. I'd keep my eyes closed, just like the rule said, and listen as something paced slowly around my bed, stopping inches from my face. I could feel it leaning down, smiling. One night, I broke a rule. I heard my name. It came from the kitchen, soft and familiar, spoken in my own voice. "Hey," it said. "Come here." Before I could stop myself, I whispered, "What?" The apartment went silent. The pressure hit instantly. My ears rang. The walls creaked like the building was settling, but deeper, louder. The bedroom door rattled violently. Something slammed against it once, twice. Then fingers began sliding underneath the door, stretching impossibly long, feeling along the floor like blind worms searching for a crack. I screamed. The fingers withdrew. The door went still. In the morning, the list had been rewritten. The rules were longer now, more detailed, more desperate. At the bottom, in darker ink, a sentence had been added. "If it starts talking like you, it's already too close." I tried to move out again. This time, I made it to my car. I drove for hours, aimlessly, until the sun came up. I slept in a parking lot, convinced I'd escaped. When I woke up, the list was sitting on the passenger seat. The paper was damp, like it had been handled by wet hands. That was when I understood. The apartment wasn't the problem. It was the thing that had lured me there. I don't know where it is now. I don't know how far it can follow. I still hear knocks sometimes, from inside my walls, from inside rooms I know are empty. I still lock my bedroom door before midnight. I still don't answer when I hear my name. And every night, I pray I don't wake up and find a new rule added to the list, because I don't know how many more chances it's willing to give me. I work the night shift at a small convenience store just off a 2-lane highway. It's the kind of place most people don't even notice unless they need gas, cigarettes, or coffee at an ungodly hour. I took the job because it was quiet and paid a little extra for overnight hours. I used to like the silence. Now I don't think I'll ever be comfortable with it again. Most nights followed the same pattern. A few truckers passing through, maybe a tired college student grabbing an energy drink, then long stretches where the store felt abandoned. The lights buzzed softly overhead, the refrigerators hummed, and the security cameras clicked every few seconds as they adjusted. I usually passed the time scrolling on my phone or restocking shelves. The first strange thing happened around 2:17 a.m. I remember the time clearly because I checked it right after. The automatic door opened, chimed, and I looked up expecting a customer. No one was there. The doors slid shut again after a few seconds. I shrugged it off. Sometimes bugs triggered the sensor. Sometimes the doors just glitched. But then it happened again. And again. Every time, the same pattern. The doors opened. The chime rang. No one entered. I started getting up from behind the counter to look outside, but the parking lot was always empty. No headlights, no engine noise, nothing but the faint glow of the street lamp and the dark stretch of highway beyond it. I checked the security footage the next morning before leaving. The doors opened exactly when I remembered. The camera angle that faced the entrance showed the doors sliding apart, and nothing else. No movement. No shadow. Just empty air. A few nights later, the man appeared. He didn't come in when the doors opened on their own. He came in normally, pushing them apart with his hands. He was tall, thin, and wearing a jacket that looked too heavy for the season. His face stuck with me immediately, not because it was scary, but because it was strangely blank. His eyes were open wide, unblinking, and his mouth rested slightly open like he had forgotten to close it. He stood just inside the entrance for a long moment, staring straight ahead. "Hey," I said. "Let me know if you need anything." He didn't respond. He didn't even look at me. After about 30 seconds, he turned and walked slowly down the first aisle. I watched him on the security monitor as much as I watched him directly. Something about the way he moved felt off. Too smooth. Too deliberate. He didn't pick anything up. He just walked up and down the aisles, stopping at the end of each one, standing still for several seconds, then turning and moving on. When he reached the refrigerated section, he stopped completely. I waited. Then I asked again if he needed help. He turned his head toward me, slowly, like his neck resisted the motion. "I'm just looking," he said. His voice was calm, flat. almost rehearsed. He stayed another few minutes, then walked out without buying anything. The doors closed behind him. I watched him on the camera as he crossed the parking lot and disappeared into the darkness beyond the streetlight. No car, no sound of footsteps once he left the concrete. I felt unsettled, but I couldn't explain why. He came back the next night. Same time, same jacket, same blank expression, same routine. Walk the aisles. Stop. Stand still. Leave. Every night after that, he returned. I started dreading the moment the door chime rang. The rest of the night felt tense, like the store itself was waiting for him. The hum of the lights seemed louder. The corners of the aisles felt darker. On the fifth night, I noticed something new. When he stopped at the end of an aisle, his lips moved slightly, like he was whispering. I couldn't hear anything from behind the counter, but the movement made my skin crawl. I checked the audio from the security footage later. There was nothing. No whispering. Just the hum of the refrigerators. The sixth night, he stopped closer to the counter than usual. He stood at the end of the aisle nearest me, facing my direction, eyes fixed on my face. His lips moved again. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. He smiled. It was the first time I had seen him do anything that resembled an expression. "Practicing," he said. "Practicing what?" He didn't answer. He turned and walked out. That night, after my shift ended, I checked the footage again. When I reached the moment where he stood facing me, the video froze for 3 seconds. When it resumed, he was already walking away. I started noticing other things after that. Items moved slightly on the shelves. The coffee pot would be empty even though I hadn't poured any out. Sometimes, when I was alone behind the counter, I thought I heard breathing that wasn't mine. Then one night, the doors opened at 2:17 a.m. No chime, no footsteps, just the sound of the doors sliding apart. I looked up slowly. He was already inside, standing directly in front of the counter. I hadn't seen him enter. I hadn't heard him. He was just there. Up close, his face looked wrong. His skin was pale, almost grey, and his eyes were glossy, like glass marbles. He leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on the counter. "You're better at this than the others," he said. My mouth went dry. "At what?" "Staying," he replied. "They leave too early." I felt cold all over. "You need to leave." He tilted his head, studying me. "Soon," he said. "I'm still practicing." "Practicing what?" I asked again. He smiled wider this time, stretching his mouth farther than it should have gone. "Being seen." The lights flickered. Just once. When they steadied, he was gone. The doors were closed. The store was empty. I quit the next morning. Didn't even finish my notice. The manager didn't argue. He just nodded, like he understood. I don't work nights anymore. I don't go into convenience stores after dark if I can help it. But sometimes, when I'm awake too late and the house is quiet, I swear I hear the soft buzz of fluorescent lights and the faint sound of a door chime that never quite finishes ringing. And I get this terrible feeling that somewhere, someone is still practicing.